The Zephyrian commander Veltar stared at the holographic display showing the enemy fleet advancing toward their home system. Red dots filled the screen like angry stars, each representing a Vorthak destroyer capable of glassing entire worlds. His forearms trembled as he counted them. Over 3,000 ships. The largest invasion force ever assembled in galactic history. "Sir, the outer defense grid has fallen," reported Communications Officer Nixara, her blue-scaled skin pale with fear. "Colony ships from 17 worlds are requesting immediate evacuation assistance." Veltar closed all 6 of his eyes and tried to center himself. The Galactic Alliance had been fighting the Vorthak Empire for nearly 2 decades, and they were losing badly. World after world fell to the insectoid invaders who consumed everything in their path. The Alliance started with 47 member species across thousands of systems. Now only 12 species remained, scattered across a few hundred worlds, desperately fighting for survival. The Vorthak were perfect killing machines. Their exoskeletons could deflect most energy weapons. Their ships regenerated damage faster than Alliance weapons could inflict it, and their numbers seemed endless. Worse still, they converted conquered worlds into breeding factories, turning captured populations into more soldiers for their endless war machine. "What about the reinforcements from the crystalline worlds?" Veltar asked, though he already knew the answer from Nixara's expression. The crystalline fleet was destroyed at Nexus Prime 3 days ago. Admiral Zorthak managed to evacuate civilians from 2 worlds before his flagship was torn apart. Nixara's voice cracked with exhaustion. "Sir, we're alone out here." The tactical display updated, showing Vorthak advanced scouts probing their defenses. These weren't the full invasion force, just the vanguard testing their response capabilities. Even these scouts outnumbered the remaining Alliance fleet by 5 to 1. "Send a priority transmission to all remaining Alliance worlds," Veltar ordered. "Tell them to begin emergency evacuation protocols. We'll hold this system as long as possible to buy them time." He knew it was futile. Their weapons barely scratched Vorthak hull armor, and their shields couldn't withstand the enemy's bioplasma cannons for more than minutes. The Alliance's most advanced battleships were nothing compared to Vorthak technology that seemed to evolve and adapt with each battle. As Veltar prepared orders for what would likely be their final stand, something unexpected appeared on the long-range sensors. A small cluster of unknown ships had dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. The vessels were tiny compared to both Alliance and Vorthak warships, barely larger than patrol craft. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the unknown vessels," Nixara reported, her voice filled with confusion. "They're using an archaic communication protocol we haven't seen in centuries." "Put it through," Veltar said, though he wondered what lost colony ship or forgotten exploration vessel had wandered into this disaster. The main screen flickered and displayed the image of a creature unlike anything in Veltar's extensive xenobiology training. It stood upright on 2 legs like a Zephyrian, but had only 2 arms and smooth pink skin instead of scales. Most disturbing were its eyes, only 2 of them, both the same unsettling blue color as deep space. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth Federation Expeditionary Force," the creature said in surprisingly clear galactic standard. "We've been monitoring your distress signals and are requesting permission to assist in the defense of this system." Veltar stared at the alien in shock. Earth Federation? He'd never heard of such an organization, and their database contained records of every known spacefaring civilization in the galaxy. These creatures called themselves humans, apparently, though that name appeared nowhere in Alliance archives. "Unknown vessel. This is Commander Veltar of the Zephyrian Defense Force," he replied carefully. "We appreciate the offer, but you should evacuate immediately. The enemy force approaching this system represents an extinction-level threat to all intelligent life." The human female smiled, an expression that somehow managed to be both reassuring and terrifying. "Commander, we didn't travel 23,000 light-years to run away from a fight. We came here specifically because someone needed help. 23,000 light-years. That would place their origin well beyond the outer rim of known space, in regions so remote that no Alliance survey ship had ever traveled there." Veltar felt a strange mixture of hope and dread as he studied the human's confident expression. "What exactly are you proposing?" he asked. "Give us targeting data on enemy positions and clear us a flight path to their main battle group," Captain Chen replied. "We'll handle the rest." Veltar looked at his tactical display again. The Vorthak scouts were already engaging his outer patrol ships, destroying them with casual ease. In less than 6 hours, the main enemy fleet would arrive and begin the systematic extermination of everything in the system. What did they have to lose? Captain Sarah Chen cut the transmission and turned to her tactical officer. Lieutenant Marcus Rodriguez was studying the enemy formations with the focused intensity that had made him legendary among human military circles. His dark eyes tracked the movement patterns of Vorthak ships like a predator watching prey. "What's your assessment, Marcus?" Sarah asked as she settled into her command chair aboard the UES Defiant. "They're good, but they're predictable," Marcus replied, highlighting several enemy formations on his display. Classic swarm tactics with heavy emphasis on overwhelming firepower. They rely on numerical superiority and regenerative hull technology. But look at this. They maintain rigid formation discipline even during combat maneuvers. Sarah nodded, understanding the implication immediately. Rigid formations were vulnerable to certain types of attacks, particularly the kind humans had spent centuries perfecting. How many ships in their advance force? Approximately 800 vessels, ranging from destroyer to battlecruiser class. Their main battle group is still 3 hours out with the heavy hitters. Marcus paused, then added with a grim smile. The locals weren't exaggerating about being outgunned. Through the viewports, Sarah could see the 12 human ships that comprised Task Force Prometheus. Each vessel was sleek and predatory, built for speed and maneuverability rather than raw firepower. To alien eyes, they probably looked pathetically small and under-armored. That misconception had served humanity well throughout their expansion into space. "Commander, incoming transmission from the Zephyrian flagship," reported Communications Officer Lisa Park. "They're sending us targeting, data and tactical analysis of enemy capabilities." Sarah reviewed the data with growing interest. The Vorthak ships were indeed impressive, heavily armored, self-repairing, and equipped with devastating bioplasma weapons. But as she studied their combat footage, she noticed something the Alliance forces had apparently missed. "Look at their targeting systems," she said, pointing to a specific sequence in the tactical records. "They're using predictive algorithms based on standard physics models. No allowance for creative maneuvering or unconventional tactics." Marcus grinned. "They've never fought anything like us before." "Exactly. Lisa, open a channel to all ships in the task force." Sarah stood up, feeling the familiar pre-battle energy coursing through her veins. "This is Captain Chen to all vessels. We're about to make first contact with a hostile alien species that has been terrorizing this galaxy for 20 years. They think they understand warfare because they've never lost a battle. Time to show them what happens when humans get creative." The acknowledgments came back quickly from the other 11 ship captains. Sarah could hear the excitement in their voices. They'd traveled farther from Earth than any humans in history, and now they had the chance to do what humans did best: fight impossible odds and somehow find a way to win. "Battle stations, people," Sarah ordered. "Remember, we're not trying to win a fair fight. We're trying to win, period. Use every advantage we have." The human ships began moving toward the enemy formations with a fluid grace that immediately caught the attention of both Vorthak and Alliance observers. Rather than maintaining formation like conventional warships, the human vessels scattered into seemingly random patterns, weaving between asteroids and using stellar phenomena to mask their approaches. Aboard the Zephyrian flagship, Commander Veltar watched in fascination as the tiny human ships approached the Vorthak advance force. "What are they doing?" he asked his tactical officer. "I'm not sure, sir. Their movement patterns don't match any known combat doctrine. It looks almost chaotic." The first Vorthak destroyer opened fire on the approaching human ships, its bioplasma cannons lighting up space with deadly green energy. But the human vessels weren't where the targeting computers expected them to be. They jinked and rolled with impossible precision, slipping between energy blasts like dancers avoiding raindrops. Then the humans opened fire, and Veltar's understanding of space combat changed forever. Instead of trying to punch through Vorthak armor with brute force, the human weapons struck with surgical precision at specific points on enemy hulls. Kinetic projectiles moving at incredible velocities punched through supposedly impenetrable shields and armor, while exotic energy weapons exploited weaknesses in Vorthak defensive systems that no one had even known existed. The first Vorthak destroyer exploded in a brilliant fireball, its regenerative systems unable to cope with the catastrophic damage inflicted in seconds. Then the second destroyer died, and the third, as human ships darted through the enemy formation like deadly ghosts. "Impossible," Veltar whispered, watching the tactical display update in real time. 800 Vorthak ships had engaged 12 human vessels. In less than 10 minutes, 43 Vorthak ships had been destroyed while the humans hadn't taken so much as a scratch on their hulls. For the first time in 20 years of war, Veltar felt something he'd almost forgotten: hope. High Admiral Vexthul of the Vorthak Empire watched the destruction of his advance force with growing disbelief. From his position aboard the massive dreadnought Flesh Render, he had witnessed the conquest of hundreds of worlds and the extermination of dozens of species. Nothing had ever challenged Vorthak supremacy in battle. Until now. "What are those creatures?" he demanded, his mandibles clicking with agitation as his compound eyes focused on the tactical display. "Where did they come from?" His intelligence officer, Sub-Admiral Krivex, manipulated the data streams with nervous precision. "Unknown species, High Admiral. Our databases contain no records of their technology or combat methods. They appear to have originated from beyond the Outer Rim territories." Vexthul studied the enemy vessels with the analytical mind that had made him the Empire's most successful military commander. The alien ships were small and appeared fragile, yet they moved with a fluidity that defied conventional physics. More disturbing still, their weapons seemed specifically designed to exploit weaknesses in Vorthak, technology that the Empire didn't even know existed. "Regenerative. Systems are failing on the damaged vessels," reported the tactical coordinator. "Their weapons are causing cascade failures in our biological components. The hull organisms are dying faster than they can reproduce." This was unprecedented. Vorthak ships were living organisms bred specifically for warfare, with hulls that could heal from damage and weapons that grew stronger with each battle. The biotechnology had proven superior to every mechanical system they'd encountered, but these mysterious aliens fought with weapons that seemed to turn Vorthak biological advantages against them. "Send orders to the main fleet," Vexthul commanded. "Full battle formation. Deploy the nest ships and release the hunter swarms. If these creatures want a war, they'll face the full might of the Empire." The Vorthak main battle group consisted of over 3,000 vessels, including 12 massive nest ships that served as mobile breeding facilities and command centers. Each nest ship carried thousands of smaller hunter craft, semi-intelligent drone fighters that could swarm enemy positions with overwhelming numbers. As the vast enemy fleet moved into attack formation, Captain Chen aboard the UES Defiant received updated intelligence from her deep space scanners. The scale of the approaching force was staggering, more firepower than had been assembled in any single battle in human history. "Sarah, we need to talk about the odds here," said her executive officer, Commander James Wright. His usually calm demeanor showed cracks of concern as he reviewed the enemy force composition. "Even with our technological advantages, we're looking at facing a 250,000 enemy, fighters plus their capital ships." Sarah studied the tactical readout with the same methodical approach that had earned her command of humanity's first deep space expeditionary force. Yes, the numbers were daunting, but numbers alone didn't win battles. Tactics did. "What's the status of our stealth reconnaissance drones?" she asked. 3 units successfully infiltrated the enemy formation," reported Lieutenant Park. "They're transmitting detailed scans of the larger vessels. The data is interesting." Sarah reviewed the intelligence with growing excitement. The Vorthak nest ships were massive and heavily armed, but they were also centralized command nodes for the entire fleet. More importantly, they appeared to coordinate the smaller hunter craft through biological neural networks that connected all the ships in their battle group. "Marcus, what happens if we disrupt those neural networks?" Lieutenant Rodriguez ran the analysis through his tactical computers, then looked up with a predatory grin. "The smaller craft lose coordination and revert to basic instinct patterns. They'd be fighting as individuals instead of as a coordinated force." "Perfect. Lisa, open a channel to Task Force Prometheus." Sarah moved to the center of the bridge, feeling the weight of decision on her shoulders. Not just the fate of her small fleet, but potentially the survival of every intelligent species in this galaxy. "All ships, this is Prometheus Actual. We're about to engage the largest enemy fleet in recorded galactic history. The locals tell us these Vorthak have never been defeated in battle. They've conquered hundreds of worlds and driven entire species to extinction." Sarah paused, letting her words sink in. "Today, that changes." "Today?" They learn why you never fight humans unless you're prepared to lose everything. The human ships began spreading out into attack formations that seemed to violate every principle of conventional space warfare. Instead of concentrating their firepower, they scattered across a volume of space millions of kilometers wide. To observers from both sides, it looked like the tiny human force was trying to spread itself too thin to be effective. Commander Veltar aboard the Zephyrian flagship watched the human deployment with confusion. What are they doing? They can't possibly engage that entire fleet with such dispersed formations. But Captain Chen knew something that none of the other combatants understood. Humans didn't fight fair, and they never played by anyone else's rules. As the Vorthak fleet advanced in their traditional overwhelming formation, the human ships began implementing a battle plan that would have been considered impossible by any conventional military doctrine. The war was about to change forever, and the Vorthak Empire was about to learn what happened when an unstoppable force met human ingenuity. The battle began with a move that violated every principle of space warfare known to the galaxy. Instead of engaging the Vorthak fleet directly, the human ships activated experimental technology that had never been tested in actual combat temporal displacement fields that allowed them to phase slightly out of normal space-time. Lieutenant Rodriguez watched his targeting display as enemy weapons passed harmlessly through human ships that flickered in and out of phase like ghosts. Temporal shields holding steady, he reported with satisfaction. The Vorthak can't lock onto us while we're displacement jumping. The effect on enemy morale was immediate and devastating. Vorthak commanders watched their most powerful weapons strike empty space, while human vessels materialized behind their formations to deliver precision strikes against critical systems. The Empire's legendary invincibility began cracking under the assault of tactics they couldn't understand or counter. Focus fire on the nest ships, Captain Chen ordered over the task force communication network. Take out their command nodes and the smaller craft will lose coordination. The UES Defiant phased back into normal space directly above one of the massive nest ships, its hull bristling with weapons that Earth's engineers had spent decades perfecting. Railguns fired depleted uranium projectiles at significant fractions of light speed, while quantum torpedoes exploited weaknesses in biological armor that no alien species had ever discovered. The first nest ship died in a cascade of explosions as its biological systems collapsed under weapons specifically designed to disrupt organic technology. Immediately, thousands of hunter craft in that section of the Vorthak fleet began flying erratic patterns as their neural command link severed. High Admiral Vexthal felt something he'd never experienced. In centuries of warfare, genuine fear. How are they doing this? He demanded, watching his supposedly invincible fleet being systematically dismantled by a handful of alien ships. Their technology appears to manipulate space-time itself, Sub-Admiral Krivex reported, his voice trembling with shock. They're not just using advanced weapons, they're operating under completely different physical laws. But the humans weren't finished demonstrating their unconventional approach to warfare. As the second wave of Vorthak ships moved to engage them, Captain Chen activated another piece of experimental technology that pushed the boundaries of what was considered possible. Initiating quantum entanglement targeting, she announced calmly. All ships, prepare for synchronized strike pattern Alpha 7. Across the battlefield, 12 human ships suddenly acted as a single coordinated entity. Their movements became perfectly synchronized. Their weapons fired in complex patterns that created interference waves in space itself, and their defensive systems linked together to form protective fields that covered the entire human formation. The result was spectacular. Human weapons fire converged on Vorthak targets with mathematical precision, creating destruction patterns that maximized damage while minimizing energy expenditure. Enemy return fire struck coordinated shield matrices that distributed incoming energy across all 12 ships, making the small human fleet nearly invulnerable to conventional attacks. Commander Veltar watched the impossible battle unfold with growing amazement. They're fighting like a single organism, he whispered to his tactical officer. 12 ships acting with perfect coordination across millions of kilometers of space. The third nest ship exploded under concentrated human fire, and with it died another section of the Vorthak fleet's coordination. Hunter craft began attacking each other in confused frenzy, while larger vessels struggled to maintain formation without central guidance, but the humans weren't content. With merely disrupting enemy coordination, they began, demonstrating why human warfare had evolved. Beyond simple destruction to psychological dominance, the remaining human ships began hunting the confused hunter swarms with methodical precision. But instead of simply destroying them, they herded the alien craft toward specific areas of space. "What are they doing now?" Vexthul demanded as he watched his fighters being systematically gathered into tight formations. The answer came in the form of a new weapon that no alien civilization had ever conceived: gravity. Manipulation technology that created localized, gravitational anomalies in space. The gathered hunter craft found themselves trapped in artificial gravity wells that compressed them into increasingly smaller volumes until their hulls collapsed. Under the immense pressure, thousands of enemy fighters died simultaneously as human ships demonstrated their mastery of fundamental forces that other species barely understood. The psychological impact on surviving Vorthak forces was devastating. They weren't just being defeated. They were being toyed with by creatures who fought with the casual confidence of predators playing with prey. "Retreat," Vexthul finally ordered, his voice cracking with desperation. "Signal general withdrawal. Get us away from these demons." But Captain Chen had no intention of letting the enemy fleet escape to regroup and threaten other worlds. "All ships pursuit formation," she commanded. "Don't let them reorganize. We end this threat here and now." The human ships began their pursuit of the fleeing Vorthak fleet, and with that pursuit began the final phase of a battle that would reshape the balance of power in the entire galaxy. The battle began with a move that violated every principle of space warfare known to the galaxy. Instead of engaging the Vorthak fleet directly, the human ships activated experimental technology that had never been tested in actual combat: temporal displacement fields that allowed them to phase slightly out of normal space-time. Lieutenant Rodriguez watched his targeting display as enemy weapons passed harmlessly through human ships that flickered in and out of phase like ghosts. "Temporal shields holding steady," he reported with satisfaction. "The Vorthak can't lock onto us while we're displacement jumping." The effect on enemy morale was immediate and devastating. Vorthak commanders watched their most powerful weapons strike empty space, while human vessels materialized behind their formations to deliver precision strikes against critical systems. The Empire's legendary invincibility began cracking under the assault of tactics they couldn't understand or counter. "Focus fire on the nest ships," Captain Chen ordered over the task force communication network. "Take out their command nodes and the smaller craft will lose coordination." The UES Defiant phased back into normal space directly above one of the massive nest ships, its hull bristling with weapons that Earth's engineers had spent decades perfecting. Railguns fired depleted uranium projectiles at significant fractions of light speed, while quantum torpedoes exploited weaknesses in biological armor that no alien species had ever discovered. The first nest ship died in a cascade of explosions as its biological systems collapsed under weapons specifically designed to disrupt organic technology. Immediately, thousands of hunter craft in that section of the Vorthak fleet began flying erratic patterns as their neural command link severed. High Admiral Vexthul felt something he'd never experienced. In centuries of warfare, genuine fear. "How are they doing this?" he demanded, watching his supposedly invincible fleet being systematically dismantled by a handful of alien ships. "Their technology appears to manipulate space-time itself," Sub-Admiral Krivex reported, his voice trembling with shock. "They're not just using advanced weapons, they're operating under completely different physical laws." But the humans weren't finished demonstrating their unconventional approach to warfare. As the second wave of Vorthak ships moved to engage them, Captain Chen activated another piece of experimental technology that pushed the boundaries of what was considered possible. "Initiating quantum entanglement targeting," she announced calmly. "All ships, prepare for synchronized strike pattern Alpha 7. Across the battlefield, 12 human ships suddenly acted as a single coordinated entity. Their movements became perfectly synchronized. Their weapons fired in complex patterns that created interference waves in space itself, and their defensive systems linked together to form protective fields that covered the entire human formation. The result was spectacular. Human weapons fire converged on Vorthak targets with mathematical precision, creating destruction patterns that maximized damage while minimizing energy expenditure. Enemy return fire struck coordinated shield matrices that distributed incoming energy across all 12 ships. making the small human fleet nearly invulnerable to conventional attacks. Commander Veltar watched the impossible battle unfold with growing amazement. "They're fighting like a single organism," he whispered to his tactical officer. 12 ships acting with perfect coordination across millions of kilometers of space. The third nest ship exploded under concentrated human fire, and with it died another section of the Vorthak fleet's coordination. Hunter craft began attacking each other in confused frenzy, while larger vessels struggled to maintain formation without central guidance. But the humans weren't content with merely disrupting enemy coordination. They began demonstrating why human warfare had evolved beyond simple destruction to psychological dominance. The remaining human ships began hunting the confused hunter swarms with methodical precision. But instead of simply destroying them, they herded the alien craft toward specific areas of space. "What are they doing now?" Vexthul demanded as he watched his fighters being systematically gathered into tight formations. The answer came in the form of a new weapon that no alien civilization had ever conceived: gravity. Manipulation technology that created localized gravitational anomalies in space. The gathered hunter craft found themselves trapped in artificial gravity wells that compressed them into increasingly smaller volumes until their hulls collapsed. Under the immense pressure, thousands of enemy fighters died simultaneously as human ships demonstrated their mastery of fundamental forces that other species barely understood. The psychological impact on surviving Vorthak forces was devastating. They weren't just being defeated. They were being toyed with by creatures who fought with the casual confidence of predators playing with prey. "Retreat," Vexthul finally ordered, his voice cracking with desperation. "Signal general withdrawal. Get us away from these demons." But Captain Chen had no intention of letting the enemy fleet escape to regroup and threaten other worlds. "All ships pursuit formation," she commanded. "Don't let them reorganize. We end this threat here and now." The human ships began their pursuit of the fleeing Vorthak fleet, and with that pursuit began the final phase of a battle that would reshape the balance of power in the entire galaxy. The ceasefire that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. For the first time in 20 years, Vorthak warships powered down their weapons and waited for orders from an empire that no longer knew how to proceed. High Admiral Vexthul transmitted the human terms to the Vorthak High Council, along with detailed recordings of the battle that had shattered their military supremacy. Emperor Zargoth, supreme ruler of the Vorthak Empire, received the transmission in his throne room on the capital world of Nexus Hive. For 8 centuries, he had ruled through absolute military dominance, conquering species after species until half the galaxy bowed before Vorthak might. The idea that 12 alien ships could threaten his entire civilization seemed impossible. "Play the battle recordings again," he commanded his advisors. His massive form hunched over tactical displays that showed the systematic destruction of his forces. The footage was humbling. Vorthak ships that had conquered hundreds of worlds were being disabled with surgical precision by weapons that seemed to ignore the laws of physics. Worse still, the aliens fought with a casual confidence that suggested they were holding back most of their capabilities. "What are your recommendations?" Emperor Zargoth asked his war council. Supreme General Klickstar, the Empire's most decorated military commander, spoke with uncharacteristic uncertainty. "Your Majesty, our analysts believe the humans were using perhaps 30% of their technological capabilities during the engagement. If they deployed their full arsenal, they could potentially sterilize our core worlds within days." The Emperor's compound eyes focused on the strategic implications. The Vorthak Empire controlled over 2,000 worlds and commanded fleets numbering in the millions of ships. The idea that such power could be threatened by a handful of aliens was almost incomprehensible. "Contact this human commander," he decided. "Arrange a meeting. I will negotiate personally." Meanwhile, aboard the UES Defiant, Captain Chen was coordinating with Alliance forces to establish humanitarian corridors for the evacuation of threatened civilian populations. The arrival of human forces had not only stopped the Vorthak advance, but created opportunities to reclaim worlds that had been lost years earlier. Commander Veltar arrived aboard Chen's ship for a formal meeting, accompanied by representatives from the surviving Alliance species. His first sight of the human vessel's interior was startling. Instead of the sterile military efficiency he expected, the ship felt almost comfortable, with crew members who seemed relaxed despite having just fought the most important battle in galactic history. Captain Chen, Veltar began formally. On behalf of the Galactic Alliance, I want to express our profound gratitude for your intervention. Without your arrival, our species faced certain extinction. Sarah Chen smiled with genuine warmth as she gestured for her guests to sit around a conference table that seemed designed for diplomacy rather than war. Commander, we're honored to have helped, but I want to be clear about something. We didn't come here to become your new protectors. We came to level the playing field. What do you mean? Asked Ambassador Rixella of the Crystalline Worlds, her translucent features reflecting curiosity. The Vorthak Empire became dominant because they had better technology and tactics than anyone else in this region of space, Chen explained. But dominance through superior force isn't sustainable. It just creates cycles of oppression and rebellion. What we're offering is something different. She activated a holographic display showing technological schematics that made the Alliance representatives gasp in amazement. The designs were for weapons, shields, and propulsion systems decades ahead of anything in their databases. We're prepared to share defensive technologies with any Alliance species that wants them, Chen continued. Not our most advanced systems, but enough to ensure that no single empire can ever again threaten the freedom of entire civilizations. Commander Veltar stared at the technical readouts with growing excitement. These weren't just improvements to existing technology. They represented fundamental advances in multiple fields of science that would revolutionize Alliance capabilities. Why would you do this? Ambassador Rixella asked suspiciously. What do humans gain from this arrangement? Chen's expression became thoughtful. Ambassador, humanity learned something important during our own development. The galaxy is a better place when everyone has the freedom to choose their own path. Empires built on conquest and oppression eventually fall, but alliances built on mutual respect and shared defense can last for millennia. You're offering to arm us against future threats? Veltar asked, hardly daring to believe it. We're offering to teach you to defend yourselves, Chen corrected. There's a difference. Weapons can be used for conquest, but defensive technology only works when you're protecting something worth preserving. The conference was interrupted by an urgent communication from the Vorthak flagship. Emperor Zargoth himself was requesting a direct meeting with Captain Chen to discuss terms for a permanent peace agreement. It seems your empire has decided to take our offer seriously, Chen told the Alliance representatives. This could be the beginning of a new era for this entire region of space. As preparations began for the most important diplomatic meeting in galactic history, the human ships maintained their positions around the Vorthak fleet. They had proven their military superiority beyond any doubt. Now came the greater challenge, turning military victory into lasting peace that would reshape the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The pursuit of the retreating Vorthak fleet became a masterclass in human tactical thinking. Rather than simply chasing the enemy ships in a straight line, Captain Chen divided her forces into hunting packs that used hyperspace jump calculations to predict where fleeing vessels would emerge from faster-than-light travel. Remember, she broadcast to her captains, we're not just trying to destroy their fleet. We're sending a message to their entire empire. Every ship that escapes will carry stories of this battle back to Vorthak space. Make sure those stories are memorable. Lieutenant Rodriguez coordinated the pursuit with the cold precision of a chess master, moving pieces across a three-dimensional board. Human ships appeared at seemingly random points around fleeing Vorthak vessels, using their superior technology to force enemy ships out of hyperspace at predetermined locations. The first group of fleeing destroyers found themselves facing the UES Phantom, commanded by Captain Maria Santos, a woman whose reputation for creative destruction was legendary even among human military circles. Instead of simply destroying the enemy ships, she activated a new piece of technology that left Vorthak survivors with nightmares for years to come. Initiating neural interface hack, Captain Santos reported with grim satisfaction. Let's see how their biological computers handle human programming. The Vorthak destroyers suddenly began receiving false sensory data directly through their organic control systems. To their crews, it appeared as though space itself was turning against them. Stars became predatory eyes, empty vacuum filled with ghostly human faces, and their own ships seemed to be dissolving around them. The psychological warfare was devastatingly effective. Vorthak crews, already demoralized by their impossible defeat, began abandoning their posts as their own ships seemed to transform into nightmare landscapes. Several vessels crashed into each other as panicked pilots lost control of their faculties. Meanwhile, High Admiral Vexthul aboard the Fleshrender found himself facing a different kind of torment. The human ship UES Retribution, under Commander David Kim, had been shadowing the Vorthak flagship for over an hour without attacking. Every time Vexthul ordered evasive maneuvers, the human ship anticipated his moves and appeared exactly where his navigation computers said was impossible. "They're toying with us," Sub-Admiral Krivex observed with growing terror. "They could have destroyed us a dozen times over, but they're choosing not to." Why? The answer came when Commander Kim finally opened communications with the Vorthak flagship. The human appeared on their main screen with an expression of calm professionalism that was somehow more terrifying than any display of anger or hatred. "High Admiral Vexthul," Commander Kim said in perfect Vorthak language, "I am Commander David Kim of the Earth Federation Navy. We need to discuss terms for the survival of your empire." Vexthul stared at the alien with shocked disbelief. "You speak our language? How is that possible?" "We've been monitoring your communications for the past several hours," Kim replied matter-of-factly. "Our artificial intelligence systems have full linguistic analysis capabilities. We understand not just your words, but your cultural context, military doctrine, and psychological profiles. We know exactly who you are, Admiral, and more importantly, we know what you value most." The human's casual demonstration of technological superiority was more devastating than any weapon. If they could decode an entire alien language and culture in just hours of observation, what else were they capable of? "What terms?" Vexthul asked, his voice hollow with defeat. "Complete withdrawal from all Alliance territories," Commander Kim replied. "Immediate cessation of all hostilities against member species, and full territorial autonomy for every world currently under Vorthak occupation." "The Empire will never agree to such demands," Vexthul protested, though his heart wasn't in the words. "We are the rightful rulers of this galaxy. Lesser species exist only to serve our needs." Commander Kim's expression didn't change, but somehow his presence became more menacing. "Admiral, in the past 4 hours, 12 human ships have destroyed over 40% of the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history. We did this while suffering 0 casualties and using less than 30% of our available weapon systems. Your Empire's military superiority is a myth that we have thoroughly disproven." The tactical display on the Vorthak bridge updated to show the current status of their retreat. Of the 3,000 ships that had entered the battle, fewer than 1,800 remained functional. The humans had systematically dismantled the most powerful military force in known space with casual efficiency. "But more importantly," Commander Kim continued, "we know about your breeding worlds, your supply lines, and your command structure. We know the location of every major Vorthak installation within 50 light years of here. If necessary, we can end your Empire's ability to wage war within the next 30 days. Vexthul felt the last remnants of his confidence crumble. These humans weren't just superior warriors. They were strategists who understood warfare on a level that the Vorthak Empire had never imagined. They had turned a single battle into checkmate for an entire civilization. "What guarantee do we have that your species won't simply replace us as galactic conquerors?" Vexthul asked desperately. For the first time, Commander Kim smiled, and the expression contained both reassurance and warning. "Admiral, humans don't conquer for the sake of conquest. We came here because someone needed help. When that help is no longer needed, we'll return to our own territory and leave you to rebuild your civilization in peace." "And if we refuse your terms?" The smile faded from Commander Kim's face. "Then we'll demonstrate why, in human history, the most dangerous mistake any enemy can make is forcing us to get creative."